Hello everyone, and welcome to another video in my series on the music of Joe Hisaishi. In my last video, we spent some time exploring the melodic form of the Castle in the Sky main theme. I want to take what I learned from that video, including how the melodic phrases are organized, and compose my own theme inspired by Hisaishi's music. This video will focus primarily on the melodic phrase structure. However, I'll also be inspired to use a lot of the same harmonic and rhythmic choices as Hisaishi. First, I want to briefly recap what I mean by melodic phrase structure. Be sure to check out my previous video for a thorough analysis, but essentially we're talking about how a theme is constructed from basic motivic ideas, contrasting ideas, and cadences. In the main theme to Castle in the Sky, I looked at the antecedent-consequent relationship. The antecedent phrase is made up of a two-measure basic idea that is repeated sequentially in the next two measures. Then the second half of the phrase is constructed from fragmentation of that basic idea that leads us into the half cadence. The half cadence is what leads us right back into the same basic idea. This is the consequent phrase. It's basically a repetition of the first 8 measures, only this time it ends with a stronger cadence. There's usually one little wrinkle in all of these Hisaishi themes that are otherwise very straightforward and classically structured. The wrinkle here is that the antecedent phrase is repeated again but modulated to the relative major key. Then we get a B theme or a contrasting theme in the middle. This is fairly typical of his main themes, and it usually coincides with a significant orchestration change, like woodwinds on the melody. After the B section, we return to the primary thematic material with the antecedent and consequent phrases. I won't get into how he orchestrates the different sections and creates climactic moments through density and instrumentation. That's for another video. But when simply looking at how he organizes repetitions of the main theme and adds contrasting material, I think it makes the task of trying to write something similar just a bit easier. But before I start composing, I just want to demonstrate that there are several other Hisaishi themes that use standard classical forms as well. The Path of the Wind from My Neighbor Totoro has an even simpler structure. It starts with a one-measure basic idea. Then we have the repeat of that idea, shifted to fit the new chord. Then we get a contrasting idea that leads into a half cadence. Those 4 measures make up the antecedent phrase. The consequent phrase starts the same way, but ends in a full cadence in C minor. Although it's minor 5-1 instead of a dominant 5, not exactly standard in classical music, but like I said, there's always a few wrinkles. But overall, it's much simpler than Castle in the Sky because the first 8 measures repeat exactly here. Then we get a contrasting middle phrase, which has a slightly different phrase structure. The basic idea is a 2-measure unit instead of a 1-measure unit, but you still have a similar basic idea, contrasting idea structure, with the second contrasting idea leading into a cadence. Then the last 8 measures of the theme bring back the primary motivic idea with the same exact structure as before. One of the main themes from Kiki's delivery service has basically the exact same structure, 32 measures built from the same AABA form as the Totoro theme. The first 8 measures are constructed from a 4-measure antecedent and a 4-measure consequent. That's repeated exactly in the next 8 measures. Then we get a contrasting B theme for 8 measures, then the repeat of the primary theme. The only wrinkle is that at the end of the B material phrase, the cadence is extended by an extra 2 beats here, but that's it. On the other hand, the Legend of Ashitaka, one of the main themes to Princess Mononoke, has a bunch of wrinkles that mask the classical structure. It starts with a 2-measure basic idea in F minor, then a 3-measure contrasting idea, so immediately there's a bit of conflict there with the extra measure. Then we get the consequent phrase, and the contrasting idea is 2 measures this time. Then we get a B section constructed from a 4-measure presentation of a new idea, then a 4-measure continuation idea, followed by a 3-measure transitional idea, so an 11-measure middle section, which is a bit unusual. We then get the final A section repeated, and it reverses the endings of the first antecedent and consequent phrases, which to me actually helps round out this entire form and gives it a greater sense of finality. Of all 4 themes that I've looked at, this one has by far the most oddities. So I think I'll write 2 different themes, using a few different types of structures, similar to what I've looked at in this video so far. And I can't write a melodic theme without mentioning harmony first. I'll talk more about Hisaishi's harmonic language in other videos, so for now, I'll just mention this very obvious pattern that I've witnessed in these themes. Look at the bass notes in the first 8 measures of the Castle in the Sky theme, completely descending by step until the cadence at the end of the phrase. Similar pattern in the consequent phrase. I can go through the other pieces I've looked at today to find similar stepwise bass motion. It's not always descending, but there's quite a bit of stepwise motion in the bass. And he's using all sorts of inversions, 7th chords, extended tertian chords, suspended chords, but the foundation of these themes is functional tonal harmony. With all of that in mind, I'll start composing the first theme. Here's a list of decisions I came up with that I need to make. While Hisaishi has written plenty of great music in a 3/4 meter, like most of the score to Howl's Moving Castle and some great moments in Spirited Away, the themes I looked at today are all in 4/4 time. I'll be looking at his use of 3/4 time in another video, so stay tuned for that. But for this theme, I'll choose 4/4. And I've noticed a lot of Hisaishi's themes, at least from the earlier films that I've looked at thus far, have been in either C minor or in F minor. I'll choose F minor for this first one. And quite a few of the themes that I've looked at start with pickup notes, usually 1 or 2 beats, so I'll do the same. So for theme 1, here's the basic idea I came up with. I tried to keep this as simple as possible, only 2 distinct pitches here, but really there are 2 things that make up this basic idea, the rhythm and the contour. When I later repeat this basic idea, I can keep the rhythms exactly the same, but change the pitches to fit the chords, as long as the contour is similar enough. This particular basic idea barely has a contour, but I can exaggerate the interval sizes in subsequent repetitions. Next, I want to think about both the phrase structure of this first statement and the harmony, because they're so connected that I tend to make those decisions simultaneously. I've decided to start with the tonic chord in measure 1, then move to the major 3 chord, first inversion, which will resolve up to the major 4 chord. Meanwhile, the basic idea is repeated but altered to fit those chords. That contour is exaggerated, and the long note on the downbeat has moved stepwise down for measure 1. Notice that the downbeat in measure 2, the B flat, is not a part of that A flat major triad, nor is it a part of the D flat major triad in beat 3. Hisaishi relies on seconds, fourths, sixths, and seventh scale degrees to create a harmonic foundation, so I'll mix and match using notes from the triad and some of those other tones, not just as passing tones in the melody, but as important metrically stressed notes as well. Here are the next 2 measures. Basically, I decided to reverse what I did in terms of what notes are on the downbeats, moving from C to B flat, then B flat back up to C again. But I figured reversing the chords in the same way might be boring, so instead of ending up on F minor in measure 4, I decided to work my way towards the relative major chord, A flat major, and so I used these predominant to dominant chords in A flat to get there. Here's what this sounds like so far. I want this to have an antecedent consequent phrase structure, so I need to get back to F minor in measure 5. The easiest way to do this, and I've seen Hisaishi do this exact same thing, from the major 3 chord is to move the bass down by step and to form a 5/4/3 chord. That's the dominant harmony, a C chord with the dominant 7th in 3rd inversion, so the 5th of the chord, or the G, is in the bass. The bass can then just walk straight down another step to F, which will start the consequent phrase. So I have my first structural cadence, a half cadence at the end of the antecedent phrase. The next phrase starts the same way, although I decided to alter the harmony slightly this time. The basic harmonic shape is the same, but I'm creating a smoother stepwise descending bass line, starting at the F, then moving down to E flat, then down to D flat, then C, then B flat, then working its way back up by step to F. Here are the first 8 measures. Alright, so that's the first statement of the theme, and I might as well keep it simple and construct a 32 measure theme with an AABA structure. So I'll repeat these 8 measures. When it comes time to orchestrate this, which I'll probably do in another video, I can use orchestration and instrumentation to differentiate this repeated statement from the first one. Let's now turn to the B section, which will be 8 measures total. A few words about my strategy for that. I've already mentioned in other videos that Hisaishi blends a lot of different harmonic languages throughout his music, and sometimes even within the same theme, he might have the main part of the theme start with modal harmonies, or maybe classical era harmonies, and then he might shift to using jazz chords in the B section. He does a really amazing job, I think, of blending these harmonic languages, so the shifts that occur never really feel out of place. I'm not sure I'll be able to do exactly what he does, blending these styles seamlessly, that is, but I'll go ahead and try shifting to use more jazz-influenced chords in this B section. So here's what I came up with. My harmonic choices were definitely jazzier, but I attempted to make the melody related in some way to the A section by using some pentatonicism and starting the phrase with a similar idea to that original basic idea. In the second half of the B section, I decided to create some harmonic instability by going to chords outside of the diatonic collection, including these chords here, which I've approached by sequencing some 2/5 chords. Then the next 2 measures here, it's all about getting back to F minor and trying to transition back to the original harmonic language from these jazzier B section chords. And at the end here, I want to return to the A section. I need 2 beats for those pickups. I don't really want to borrow those 2 beats from the last measure here, so I'll do what Hisaishi often does and simply add in an extra 2 beats using a 6/4 measure. That leads us back into the A section to round out the 32 measures. Other than the 2 added beats, I'm really not doing anything unusual in terms of phrase structure or conflicts. I'll try to add more wrinkles to my second theme. I'll go ahead and play the whole theme again, just using block chords in the left hand of the piano for now. In an upcoming video, I'll discuss how Hisaishi writes for piano, and at that point I'll take these themes and add a more pianistic accompaniment. By the way, you can get the MIDI and Music XML files, as well as the Dorico file for this on my Patreon page if you like. Okay, onto my second theme. I won't spend much time detailing my process for this one, but I went through the same steps, I just made different decisions along the way. Here's the basic idea. I'm in the key of C minor this time, still using pickups and still in 4/4 time, but there are a lot of wrinkles in the form, even just in the first statement of the theme. The basic idea is repeated, then there's a contrasting idea. The first 4 measures function sort of like an antecedent. However, there really isn't a cadence in measure 4. The next 4 measures sort of repeat the first 4 measures, but it's sequenced up. There is cadential motion in measure 8, and with the G7 chord in beat 4, you think it's leading back to C minor, but instead I have yet another 4-measure phrase that works its way back to C minor. I'll play the first 12 measures that make up the A section of the theme now. So then the A section repeats. The first 2 4-bar phrases are basically repeated from the first statement, but the third part of the phrase takes us in a different direction here. The G7 chord actually goes to C minor this time, then it moves around harmonically to an E flat major 7 chord, then B flat major 7, and eventually we hit this G7 sus4 chord that resolves to G7. This is definitely something Hisaishi does a lot. He extends the half cadence using sus4 chords. Okay, I'll play the first 26 measures right up until the B section. Next, there's an 8-measure B section. I made a conscious effort to contrast the melody from the first section, so I have longer moving eighth note lines that don't pause every measure. It's always a good idea to look at what patterns you're forming and then decide whether or not to alter the pattern. I felt that the type of melodic writing I was using in the first 26 measures was a little repetitive and I needed to vary it. And I varied the harmonies as well to make it feel like a bridge or a B section. After the B section, I have another statement of the A section to round out the form, although this time the A section is 14 measures in length. I've extended the ending a bit to make it stand out from the beginning. I'm just using ascending stepwise motion in the bass to form chords that lead us back eventually to C. So this theme is a bit stranger, and the form has way more twists and turns than the first theme that I wrote. I was inspired by Hisaishi's Legend of Ashitaka theme for this one, and specifically how repetitions of phrases are treated in that piece. It's like there are more obstacles to get through in the form, and at least in Hisaishi's case, I think that helps to build up the dramatic narrative. Alright, so I'll play through this theme just using block chords again. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I certainly had a lot of fun coming up with these themes, and I'm looking forward to turning these into piano parts, and then after that into full orchestrations. So stay tuned for more videos in my series on the music of Joe Hisaishi really soon. Thanks so much for watching, and see you then.